So the Netflix miniseries Adolescence is causing quite a stir. It has many rave reviews, 5 stars mostly across the board from what I can see. But it is a little bit problematic in certain areas. Now, I've already covered the fact that having a young white 13-year-old boy isn't wholly representative of perhaps knife crime in the UK. But there is another bigger issue, which I'll explain. Now, reading the reviews, it seems to be that people are in unanimous agreement that the performances are excellent, it's very well shot, apparently a lot of it is one take, and the story is compelling and gripping. A lot of the headlines are about incel culture. Anybody that hasn't seen it, the young boy who plays the central character is 13 in the series, and he's played by a 15-year-old. So you have this young 13-year-old white kid, and it's claimed that he is a product of incel culture. Now, this, to me, is a serious problem. If you're not familiar with what the term incel means, it means, and I'll read it verbatim, a member of an online community of young men who consider themselves unable to attract women sexually, typically associated with views that are hostile towards women, and also men who are sexually active. That's the incel definition. It's involuntary celibate. That's what it means, incel. Are you seriously telling me that that's what a 13-year-old boy is? I mean, on the one hand, a 13-year-old boy possibly could be involuntarily celibate, technically, because all 13-year-old boys should be. Are you seriously suggesting that 13-year-old boys should be seeking out sex? Is that what people are saying? Because that's crazy. 13 years old. We all know that kids under 16, which is the legal age of consent in the UK, we know that kids have sex. The majority of them more towards the legal age. Yes, kids have sex at 13. At such a young age, like the age of 13. Maybe below, maybe a bit older. You might hope for some kind of sexual activity, but it doesn't mean to say that if you don't get it, you're then suddenly involuntarily celibate. You are just literally just starting to kind of notice and attract the opposite sex and go through that whole sort of painful growth period of learning about yourself, learning how to interact with the opposite sex. To say that a 13-year-old boy, call them an incel, I mean, what are we doing here? We're sexualizing 13-year-olds. And of course, 13-year-olds have sexual thoughts, sexual urges, etc., etc. Think back to when we were 13. A lot of people definitely hit puberty a lot earlier and were probably capable of having sex a lot earlier. Probably thought a lot about sex and wanted sex, but didn't actually do it till they're a little bit older. Castigating a 13-year-old as an incel, and I've just read the definition, a member of an online community of young men who consider themselves unable to attract women sexually. It's not that he's unable to attract women sexually. He's a boy and shouldn't be having sex in the first place. I just think that this is a really, really weird way of framing this. Incel culture isn't really 13-year-olds. I just don't see that. Incel culture is more about young men who are anywhere from the mid-teenage point and older, all the way up to whatever age, unable to engage in activities for whatever reason. And then they'll go online, find a community, and then obviously you go into exactly what the incel culture, the definition means. But not a 13-year-old boy. It's really weird and just odd to sexualize a 13-year-old boy and to do it in such a mainstream way. Now, is this one of the reasons they chose a white boy to do this with? Because you sure as hell couldn't get away with that with anybody else, could you? I mean, quite frankly, it's pretty disgusting, I think. But again, this is something that seems to be viewed through the prism of feminism. It's a really strange dichotomy where we don't want our kids to be sexually active at such a young age, and yet we are sexualizing them at such a young age. It's utterly ridiculous. There's a point in every young person's life where, yeah, you might have a few fumbles or a quick few roll in the hay type situations, But there's a definite point where you start engaging with the opposite sex and you start actually doing the, even if it's like the young person's idea of dating, which not isn't necessarily the same as maybe like an older teenager, someone in the young 20s, but there's definitely a point where it becomes an actual thing. I really wish that they'd made this kid older. Maybe they were trying to go for maximum impact by making him so young. And yes, there are some kids that have killed others with knives at such a tender age. But that isn't the overall picture. If you look at the actual statistics, it's more likely that it's an older teenager. Making them so young is a really, it's just in poor taste. It's just a really bad move. And I think it really takes away from what is actually happening in this country. Yes, things do start early, but they get worse as time gets on and the older that they progress to up until the sort of late teens. Would you say, for example, that young teenage girls would be in the same category? Or is it a case of because of their certain preferences that they don't get put into that category? Just the mere fact of people calling males incels just seems to be just another attack on men. I think it's about time that rather than castigating people about these things, we actually give them the chance to be open and support them with what they need, especially young boys of 13 years old. Now, this might be great for drama, this might be great for viewing content for some, but if you're seriously sucked into this and believe that this is a product of being an incel, then I think you need to get a grip and wake up. Young boys have problems as much as young girls do, granted, but this isn't the way to go by branding 13-year-olds incels. And this isn't really a criticism of the series, this is more a criticism of our culture and the media. Because just to sell a few papers, just to kind of get a few more clicks, this is the kind of thing that we're talking about. A 13-year-old is an incel. This constant labelling and actually mislabelling of entire sections of society is one of the problems. And then we wonder why we have those problems. This is a crazy world we live in.